What if I told you that completely forgetting the English word for refrigerator is actually like the absolute best thing that could happen to your fluency today?
I mean, it sounds completely backward.
It really does. But welcome to our deep dive. Today we are opening up this massive stack of research and transcripts from top English learning channels.
And we have a very specific mission today.
Exactly. We are extracting the essential real-world strategies you need to survive one of the most high-stakes, everyday adventures out there. And that is shopping for clothes and interacting with strangers in a new language.
Which, it sounds like a totally mundane errand if you're doing it in your native language.
Oh, sure.
But when you are operating in a new language, especially at a beginner level, a simple trip to a department store isn't just a store anymore. It's a psychological obstacle course.
100%. So whether you are actively trying to learn a language right now or you're just fascinated by the psychology of how humans communicate under pressure, this deep dive is absolutely for you. We're going to explore the beginner-friendly phrases that can literally save you from conversational panic. We'll look at some incredibly relatable and honestly hilarious real-life shopping disasters from our research.
Like Jack's famous shirt disaster.
Oh, we're definitely getting into Jack's story. And ultimately, we're going to break down how to stop stressing over perfect grammar and start actually connecting with the world around you.
To really understand the stakes here, I think we have to look at what happens in the brain when we step into a retail environment.
Okay, let's map that out.
Yeah, so we can map this out by looking at the escalating cognitive load of a shopping trip. And that escalation begins like the very second you walk through the entrance.
Right, let's start right there at the entrance. You walk through the automatic doors, you're just trying to get your bearings, and immediately this super cheerful salesperson walks right up to you.
Right.
For a language learner, especially someone at an A1 or A2 beginner level, this isn't just a friendly greeting. It feels like a pop quiz that you definitely did not study for.
It really does. It triggers an actual physiological fight, flight, or freeze response.
Wait, really? A physical response?
Oh, absolutely. Your heart rate elevates.
Yeah.
Blood literally moves away from the prefrontal cortex.
Wow.
Which is the part of your brain responsible for complex thought and language recall. And suddenly all those vocabulary lists you spent hours studying, they just vanish.
You experience a total mental blank.
Exactly.
See, my instinct in that moment when the salesperson asks if I need help would be to try and construct a sentence explaining my exact intentions, like, good afternoon, I am currently surveying your merchandise to determine if anything aligns with my preferences.
Which is way too much pressure. And the research highlights that you absolutely do not need to do that. You just need one incredibly simple phrase. Just say, I'm just looking, thanks.
I'm just looking, thanks.
That's it. It is short, direct, and it completely defuses the pressure of the interaction.
Okay, and when you do find a piece of clothing you like, the strategy remains exactly the same, right?
Yes, exactly the same. You don't construct a complex inquiry. You just hold up the item and ask, can I try this on?
Can I try this on? That's so simple.
Right, and then follow it up with, where can I find the fitting room?
Or if you try it on and it's too small, you just ask, do you have this in another size? Or what colors do you have?
Exactly. You're not worrying about verb conjugation or conditional tenses. You're just deploying these specific memorized phrases.
I look at them like a polite force field.
A polite force field. I love that.
Or even better, like a video game inventory. You walk into a store, your anxiety spikes, but you don't have to build a sentence from scratch. You just open your inventory, pull out, I'm just looking, thanks, and deploy it.
That video game inventory analogy perfectly illustrates a foundational concept in linguistics. It's called chunking.
Chunking. Okay, break that down for me.
So we tend to think of language learning like laying bricks. We think we have to take one brick, say a pronoun, then add a verb, then a preposition, applying the mortar of grammar rules to hold it all together.
Which sounds exhausting.
It is. Doing that in real time creates massive cognitive friction. It takes time, and you hesitate.
So chunking is like having a prefabricated wall. You just drop the whole wall into place.
Yes, precisely. When you learn a phrase like, can I try this on, as one complete chunk, your brain doesn't have to parse the individual grammar rules.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Right. It retrieves the entire phrase instantly as a single unit of meaning. It requires a fraction of the processing power, which lowers your heart rate and keeps you out of that freeze response we talked about.
But the research also notes a caveat here, doesn't it? Real everyday English relies heavily on these short chunks. But what keeps them from sounding, incredibly blunt or rude?
It's the sociological aspect of English politeness markers. English relies heavily on softeners.
Yeah.
Magic words like please and excuse me.
Right.
Saying excuse me before you ask for a different size softens the whole interaction. It's a respectful way to signal to the other person that you are about to initiate an exchange.
And there's a really strong emphasis in the data on how you deliver these chunks. As a beginner, your goal shouldn't be to speak as fast as a native speaker.
Not at all.
The focus needs to be on slow, clear pronunciation. Small courage and clear pronunciation beat fast, complex grammar every single time.
Because the goal of those initial interactions isn't to prove your fluency. It's just to establish baseline communication and, navigate the space safely.
Okay, so we've used our polite force field, we've navigated the entrance, we've deployed our language chunks, and we've successfully made it into the fitting room. But this brings us to a critical transition in the language learning experience.
The unscripted crisis.
Exactly. What happens when the script completely fails? We have to move from polite, rehearsed phrases to navigating entirely unexpected mishaps.
This is where the theoretical practice meets the messy reality of human error. And the case studies in our research provide some phenomenal examples of what to do when things go wrong.
Oh man, let's look at Jack's funny story about buying a shirt. This is a classic.
It really is.
So, according to the research, Jack needed an elegant shirt for a formal event. The problem was, his old shirts were entirely too tight because he had eaten way too many cookies over the holidays.
The post-holiday wardrobe crisis, that is a deeply universal starting point.
Very universal. So, Jack is at the clothing store. He finds a beautiful shirt, asks for the fitting room, and goes inside. He puts the shirt on, and it is just way, way too small. He is completely stuck in this shirt.
He's basically trapped in a small cubicle wearing store merchandise he can't get out of.
Yes, the anxiety in that moment would be overwhelming. My instinct here, if I am in a foreign country and I am stuck in a piece of clothing, would be to totally panic about how to explain myself.
Well, of course.
I would want to make sure the salesperson knows I'm not trying to steal it or ruin it. I'd be racking my brain for advanced vocabulary to explain the structural integrity of the fabric or a sizing defect.
And if you try to do that, you will likely freeze entirely. You will stand in that fitting room in complete silence because the cognitive load of finding the word structural integrity while experiencing a massive adrenaline spike is simply too high.
But Jack didn't do that. He didn't panic. He just poked his head out of the curtain and used a simple A1 phrase. He just said, "Excuse me, I have a problem."
Notice the mechanics of that, though. He used a polite softener, and followed it with a simple, universally understood chunk, "I have a problem."
And the salesman was incredibly kind. He just laughed, helped him out, and brought Jack a bigger size. But I want to play devil's advocate for a second here.
Okay, go for it.
We are talking about language acquisition. Shouldn't we be striving to accurately describe our situations? Why is settling for a vague phrase like, "I have a problem," celebrated in this research?
Because real communication in the real world is about connection, not perfection.
Connection, not perfection.
Right. When you communicate your vulnerability clearly, even with the most basic vocabulary, it triggers empathy. The salesman didn't need an essay on fabric tension. He just needed to know his customer was in distress. The human connection completely overrode the language barrier.
That makes a ton of sense. And the research shows this applies to psychological mishaps too, doesn't it? Let's talk about the phenomenon of the impulse buy.
Ah, yes. Jake's story.
Yeah, there's a story in the data about a guy named Jake who went to the store just to buy toothpaste. Just a simple 5-minute errand. But he walked out with fuzzy socks that were on sale, a soft hoodie, an ocean breeze candle, a blender.
Even though it doesn't make smoothies.
Right. And a pair of sneakers identical to ones he already owned, like twin sneakers.
From a psychological standpoint, modern retail environments are completely designed to overwhelm your senses. The bright fluorescent lighting, the curated music, the strategic placement of sale signs, it creates intense sensory overload.
It's too much.
It is. And for a language learner, whose brain is already dedicating massive resources just to processing environmental text and speech in English, that sensory overload derails their decision-making process entirely.
So it's literally cognitive exhaustion. By the time Jake navigated the store, his brain was just too tired to talk him out of buying a blender.
Exactly.
But linguistically, learning how to talk about these moments, admitting I made an impulse purchase or I bought this by mistake, is incredibly powerful.
Because you are sharing a human flaw. You are stepping away from robotic textbook dialogue like, the weather is fine today, and you are telling a relatable story. Storytelling, even with beginner-level vocabulary, builds immediate rapport with whomever you were speaking to.
All right, so we've navigated the fitting room crisis and the sensory overload of the aisles. Now we face the final and arguably most intimidating hurdle of the shopping experience.
The cash register.
Yes, the checkout line. This is where the pressure to perform really peaks.
It's a highly time-pressured scenario. There's a physical queue of people waiting right behind you. The cashier is scanning items rapidly, often asking rapid-fire questions about loyalty programs or receipts. It is the ultimate pressure test.
The baseline toolkit for this is surprisingly straightforward, though. The research highlights just pointing and asking, "How much is this?" followed by, "I'll take it."
And I notice the researchers specifically call out that phrase, "I'll take it." They say it sounds incredibly confident.
It really does. It's a posture of decisiveness. Even if you are terrified internally, saying, "I'll take it," forces a certain cadence and rhythm that projects total confidence.
And then you follow it up with the logistical chunks, like, can I pay with card? Yeah. And can I get a receipt, please?
But the real test is when a mistake happens at the register. We have a story about a guy named Paul in the sources.
Right, the supermarket incident.
Yeah, he's at the supermarket checkout. There's a long line of impatient people behind him. The cashier finishes scanning, and Paul realizes he left his wallet at home.
Oh, nightmare scenario.
Total nightmare. Now, my reflex here, and I think the reflex of a lot of language learners, would be to start apologizing profusely to everyone in a 10-foot radius. Like, I am so sorry, my English is terrible, I'm holding up the line, I'm the worst. Why is that a bad strategy?
Over-apologizing is a very common defense mechanism. We do it to preempt criticism.
Yeah.
But in a transactional environment like a checkout line, the cashier isn't looking for an emotional confession. They're looking for logistical information.
Okay, that makes sense.
When you bury the actual problem under a mountain of panicked apologies, you confuse the interaction. The cashier has to parse through your anxiety just to figure out what is actually wrong.
So clarity is kinder than over-apologizing.
Yes.
In the case study, Paul didn't panic. He just stated the problem plainly. "I am so sorry I forgot my wallet at home."
And what was the result?
The cashier held his bags, and a stranger in line actually validated him, saying, "It happens to everyone."
Exactly. You just state the problem. And the same rule applies if the cashier asks you a question you don't understand. If they ask, "Would you like to donate $1 to our charity today?" and they speak at warp speed, you should never stay silent out of fear.
But you also shouldn't apologize for your language skills.
Right. You just use a targeted tool. "Sorry, could you repeat that, please?" Or, even better, the research suggests a highly natural phrase. Just say, "Sorry, just one word," and deliver it with a questioning tone.
Sorry, just one word. I really like that. It admits confusion without any shame. It just says, "Hey, I missed a piece of data there."
It's entirely human. And there's a broader philosophy at play here in the research. They state that habit changes confidence.
Habit changes confidence. What does that mean in practice?
It means that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the repetition of an action until the fear subsides. When you use these small, clear chunks repeatedly, even when your heart is pounding, you build flow.
So the act of saying, "Can I pay with card?" just becomes automatic.
Exactly. You aren't inventing language on the spot anymore. You are executing a habit. And once it's a habit, the pressure of the checkout line virtually disappears.
This feels like the perfect moment to zoom out a bit. We've conquered the physical environment of the store, but moving from the external act of shopping to the internal mindset of language learning. How do we actually wire our brains to use these tools naturally?
Right. How do we stop that freezing response from happening in the first place?
Yeah.
To do that, we have to address the single biggest bottleneck in language acquisition: internal translation.
Translating a thought from your native language into English in your head before you speak.
Yes. It is the absolute enemy of conversational flow.
It creates a massive lag. You're basically running a software emulator in your brain, and it drains all your processing power.
That's a great way to describe it. So the research suggests a very practical intervention to break this habit. It starts with something as simple as your weekly grocery list. Write your shopping list entirely in English. But here is the crucial psychological shift. When you see the word milk written on your list, you cannot allow yourself to think of the word for milk in your native language.
You have to bypass your mother tongue entirely.
Right. You must train your brain to connect the English word directly to the physical object, the white liquid itself.
Okay, but let's play this out. I'm in my kitchen. I'm writing my English shopping list. I look at my appliances and I realize I need to buy something for the fridge, but I absolutely cannot remember the English word for refrigerator. The immediate instinct is to pull out my phone, open a dictionary app, type in the word in my native language, and hit translate.
And our data strongly advises against doing that. Do not run to a dictionary.
Never.
Instead, you have to describe the object using the vocabulary you already possess. If you don't know the word refrigerator, you simply call it the big cold box in the kitchen.
Oh, wow.
If you don't know the word tailor, you don't translate it. You say, the person who makes my clothes short.
This is literally the board game Taboo.
Oh, you're right. In Taboo, you pull a card that says refrigerator, but you are forbidden from using certain obvious words to describe it. So you have to use all this simple alternative vocabulary to build a fence around the concept of the word you don't know. You are forcing your brain to problem solve using only the target language.
That process of building a fence around a concept is a formal linguistic strategy. Linguists call it circumlocution.
Wait, hold on. Circumlocution. That sounds like a complex surgical procedure.
Oh.
Break that down for me. Explain it to me like I'm 5.
Fair enough. Circum means around, and locution means speaking. So it literally means speaking around a word. When you hit a roadblock because you lack a specific vocabulary word, you don't stop and you don't translate. You walk around the roadblock by describing the item's function, its shape, or its color.
So calling a refrigerator a big cold box? Yes. And while it might feel silly or simplistic to call it a big cold box, neurologically, it is the ultimate secret to fluency. As we discussed, translating creates a lag. But circumlocution, walking around the word, builds an authentic English brain. It forces you to think conceptually in the target language.
Because your goal when you're shopping isn't to pass a vocabulary exam. As the research puts it, your first goal is simply communication with yourself.
And that internal communication requires a safe environment, which brings us to the concept of building a personal laboratory, a sanctuary for practice.
The research has some really interesting suggestions for this. They talk about practicing when you are entirely alone, free from the judgment of a cashier or a salesperson.
Right.
They literally suggest talking to your coffee cup in the morning, out loud, saying, I am drinking coffee, it is hot.
Or keeping a one-sentence daily journal. Before bed, you write, today I went to the store and bought food for the big cold box.
It sounds incredibly basic, but the psychology behind it is profound. When you do this in isolation, you are proving to yourself on a daily basis that you can form coherent thoughts in English without needing the safety net of a dictionary.
You are building foundational self-trust.
Exactly. So when the pressure is on, when the shirt gets stuck or the cashier speaks too fast, that self-trust prevents the freeze response.
Spot on.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? Let's recap the toolkit. We've unpacked how to protect your cognitive load at the store using your polite force field deploying slow, clear chunks like, I'm just looking, thanks, or can I try this on?
And we've explored how to handle unscripted crises, whether it's Jack getting stuck in a tiny shirt or Jake's accidental blender purchase.
Right, proving that human connection and a simple I have a problem are infinitely more effective than perfect grammar.
And we've learned how to stop the mental lag of translating by playing taboo with ourselves, describing the big cold boxes in our lives to build true fluency.
The overarching lesson across all this research is that language is not a performance to be perfected. It is a tool to be used. And sometimes the simplest tools, a polite softener, a rehearsed chunk, a humble admission of a mistake, are the most powerful mechanisms you have to navigate the world.
Beautifully said.
I want to leave you with a final thought to chew on today. We live in an era where avoiding discomfort is easier than ever. If you forget a word, you can instantly pull out your phone, open an AI app, and find the exact translation in half a second. It's frictionless. But what if that incredible convenience is actually robbing us of the very struggle that builds fluency? What if, by never having to awkwardly describe a big cold box, we are killing the vulnerability that forces our brains to adapt and connect with the people around us? The next time you find yourself lacking the perfect word, maybe leave the phone in your pocket. See what happens when you just speak around it. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.